Welcome to the Dark Nook Monster Shop. I found this pink fuzzy notebook at the dollar store, and I thought, wow, this is kind of adorable. Let's make it into a monster. And it's a little journal, so naturally I thought, diary monster. Big eyes, sharp teeth, the usual. Plus, it's a great excuse to see if my new idea for making big foam clay eyes will actually work. See, I got this thing. It's a cocoa bomb mold for making these. But to me, it seems perfect for making eyes, except that it's all floppy and has no support. So I need to support these in a way that doesn't push on them at all because that'll cause them to dent. I thought cups would work, but they're too wobbly. Maybe tape them together or build some kind of cardboard frame. But then I realized, nah man, I'm just overthinking it. Let's go super simple and just cut them down to size. And through the magic of editing, we've got 6 cut-off cups that work great. Cheap, easy, and stupid simple.
What's it say?
Well, it says, I love it when a plan comes together.
So now, we start adding clay. And first, it's the pupil. I push the clay ball in, flattening it, but trying not to lose that circular shape. I open up some foam clay, and here's the thing. No, not that thing. This thing. The foam clay is just fresh and has a lot of moisture, so it's sticky and stringy. But just let it dry out for like 5 or 10 minutes and it'll firm up into a more workable clay-like consistency. I've seen a few different people have that reaction. I'm talking to you, 𝐖𝐄𝐋𝐂𝐻𝐿. You kind of sold foam clay short. I really think you'd dig this stuff if you just took a minute to get the hang of it. Now here, I've mixed orange and black into a swirl pattern to get this cool color effect for the iris. I make a ring of clay for the iris and push it down into the mold around the pupil. I do the same with orange and yellow. I'm not sure how these are going to look. I'm just experimenting with different colors and patterns to see how they turn out. Then I add the rest of the eyeball. I'm going to make one yellow, one blue, and one white. I'm trying to make these as thin as possible because the silicone mold will not let air in to dry out the clay. So it can only dry from one side that's exposed to the air, which means it takes twice as long. And 2 days later, they're still soft enough on the surface for me to sculpt detail into the iris. I go around one direction and then the other, and this creates a nice iris pattern. I use metallic paints to put down a bit of a reflective layer. Then I go around the edges with different shades and patterns. An old ratty brush is great for this. Now I'm just going around the edges to create patterns and lines so that I can see how loud and pronounced they're going to be once they're covered in layers of Mod Podge. I add a dark brown wash to pop the iris detail, then I go around the edges on some of the eyes again. Then Mod Podge, right through the airbrush. I did 3 coats. I fray a little bit of red yarn using my all-purpose awl and then fray it some more. Once it's good and frizzy, I goop out some Mod Podge and then dip the yarn in the Mod Podge and stick it to the eyeball to make veins. Just move it around until it looks right. This is so easy and it looks so cool. repeat as necessary. You can be sure you'll see these eyes in another video. So back to the pink furry abomination. First things first, we need to trim away some of this fur, but not so much that we lose structural integrity, because this isn't glued down, it's just sort of wrapped around the book and glued down on the inside. My audience voted for the blue eyes, so I trim them to fit and get ready to glue them on. But first, I make the teeth, which is super easy with foam clay. Just shape out the tooth and leave it for about 12 hours. Now I glue the eyes on using hot glue. And I start adding clay around the eyes, building up the brow and texturing the skin. Then I fold up a worm of clay to make the nose. I use the texture stamp to shape it out, and then I finish off the detail with a rubber wedge. Now I get started on the mouth. I shape the gums first, then I make dents for the teeth and poke the teeth in. I move and position the teeth until they look just right. Once I'm happy with the angle and position of the teeth, I can start adding detail to the gums, which is really easy since foam clay holds detail well and is easily shaped with a brush and then smoothed using water. I want the teeth to bulge out a bit more, so I add some extra clay under the teeth and use that to push them forward a bit. While the teeth and gums dry, I trim the fur over the nose and glue it down. Then I add the bottom row of teeth and gums. Same process as before, stick them, shape them, smooth them, pretty simple. Now I added the tongue here, but later I decide it's too small. I start adding clay to build up the lips by laying down some green clay and blending it in. I was thinking of making the skin green, but I just wasn't happy with how it looked. I texture the lips to look glossy and monstery. Then I start adding the upper lip, making sure it overlaps the bottom lip at the corners. I want a bit of a sneer where the monster is biting its own tongue, so I build a little higher up on that side of the mouth than the other, and blend the clay in. I texture it with a stamp, and then I add in lip lines using my mighty awl. When the texture is at a point I like, I use water and a brush to shape it and smooth it out. Now, as I said, this tongue is too small, so I make a new one to fit over the old one. I could have cut out the tongue and the teeth and made a bunch of room for this new one, but honestly, I'm lazy and I just built it over and smushed it in until it fit, then propped it up to dry. Time for paint. I decided against leaving the skin green and instead went for a full-on pink, so pink base coat over all the green parts. Then I put down a little brown wash and started adding redder and redder pinks to the lips. I wet blend the redder and redder colors on the lips and tongue and add a little highlight to the nose and eyes. With a thin black wash, I add some lines to the lips and tongue, then I go over the lips some more with a slightly redder pink color. Then I coat the whole thing in Mod Podge. A final pass with Mod Podge mixed with a little black for that shiny, grimy, wet look. And when the paint is dry, I hot glue some little bits of the fur that I cut off back to the face to hide the edges. I just want to say thanks to all the people who've been checking out my videos. Please like, subscribe, and if you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments. Lastly, I glue down the brow fur piece, being careful to hide the edges, and we're all done. Hey, if you liked this video, you might like one of these videos. Or click on my face and subscribe.